So you're getting deeper and deeper into this PRS stuff. And now you've got a better rifle, you're loading your own ammunition, and you're starting to hear guys talk about the lands and how the lands are eroding as you fire rounds downrange. What does all that mean? Hi everyone, it's the 4Gun Guy, and I thought in this video what we do is look at my new barrel that I have about 1,000 rounds through. So what I wanted to do is talk about what the lands are and why they erode, how they erode. We're going to check the current lands depth of this barrel after 1,000 rounds and compare it to the lands depth when I first got it. Because if you remember in one of my videos up here, when I mounted the barrel, we took the lands measurement so we could seat our projectiles properly in our case for our new rounds for this barrel. And then we'll discuss the average erosion. So what did we find? What should we have found based on some information out there around 6.5 Creedmoors and lands erosion per se 100 rounds? And then we'll talk about chasing the lands. And am I going to do that? Don't know yet, but let's talk about some thoughts that I have around that. And then we'll talk about some final thoughts. So if you're ready, let's get to it. So look, it's pretty simple, and I've given us a simple example here. So you've got the grooves, which are like the valleys, and you've got the lands, which are the are the peaks, if you would. The bore of the rifle or the caliber of the rifle is based on the distance between two lands. So if you look at this image, the bore or caliber is a 6.5 millimeter, right? Now, some things are going to kind of screw around with your mind here because you're sitting here going, okay, it's a 6.5 Creedmoor, but if I look at the grooves are 6.7 millimeters. So why wouldn't we be calling this a 6.7 millimeter, right? That's just not how it works. If you look at the bullet diameter over there on the right, we're loading a 0.264 inch bullet, and that is traveling down the barrel. And as it does, it's the same diameter as the grooves, right? So what's happening is those lands are engraving themselves into that bullet. And as they do that, they impart the spin on the bullet because these grooves are not straight as you see here in this picture. They're twisted, right? So you'll hear a 1 in 8 twist, a 1 in 9 twist. All that means is that a 1 in 8 twist, for example, every 8 inches, the barrel is spinning the bullet 1 revolution. That's all that means. So if I have a 26-inch barrel, that means that by the time the bullet leaves the barrel, it will have spun a little over 3 times. Now, the next thing to look at is the difference between the groove diameter and the bore diameter there. So you've got 6.5 millimeters, 6.7 millimeter. The groove is 0.264 inches. The bore is 0.256 inches, which is a difference of 0.008 of an inch. So that tells us that each land is 0.004 of an inch high. Now again, this is a very simple explanation here, and I've used a very simple diagram. My barrel, for example, has 5 grooves or 5 lands, right? So it wouldn't look like this. And there are some, I guess, new studies out that say your bullet actually stabilizes better when you've got a land opposing a groove and not opposing another land. So look, that's a whole nother topic to get into with someone else who knows way more about this than me. But I just wanted to kind of give this overview to you. And one more thing, when you hear people talk about the rifling is actually made up of the grooves and the lands. So that everything in that barrel is what makes up the rifling. Well, this is what it looks like from the side. Now we were looking at it from straight on. Now we're looking at it from the side. And what I did is I highlighted those lands in red. So as I told you earlier, you can see how they gradually build up to the 4/1000ths of an inch thick. And this is exaggerated, right? This is not to scale. So, please understand that. And this is an example of a jammed bullet, right? So we are jamming into the lands. And what I'm saying here is that we are either we're beyond making contact, right? We could be 5/1000ths, 10/1000ths inches jammed into those lands. So your bullet's actually touching them, but there's no distance between the lands and the bullet, right? And that's what you're looking at there. And generally speaking, what you're looking at the contact here is where the ogive of the bullet is impacting or making contact with those lands. Well, here we can see that there's a gap now between the bullet, generally the ogive, as I said before, and the lands. So this could be a distance of 5/1000ths of an inch. It could be a distance of 100/1000ths of an inch, right? It just depends on a lot of factors. And if you've watched some of my other videos on seating depths and my land testing, my ladder testing, you'll see that I've come up with a distance that works for the bullet that I use, the cartridge that I use, the load, and everything else. But this again is the bullet not making contact with the lands, and this is where we're going to start getting into the concept of bullet jump. And finally, we get to the point that as we fire rounds down that barrel, those bullets are eroding those lands. So what you're seeing here is where the original land's location was. And then you see a little gray there. That's representing, the erosion that has occurred. And then you see the now eroded land's location. So again, as we're firing bullets down this barrel, they're eroding those lands. Well, here is the beginning of my lands in my barrel. So as you can see, and I hope you can see this, I'm going to run the scope down there in video here in a minute, but as you can see right over here towards the middle of the screen, you can kind of see where it's starting. And then as you move to the right in the screen, you can really see that it's reached its height. So I just wanted to kind of show this briefly. Let's get into some video now. So I've got the scope in the barrel and I'm running it up there and you can see the lands. Now the barrel is not clean. I've got probably 200 or 300 rounds through this thing. So it's not going to be super duper clean, but you can start to see how the lands, begin from really nothing. And we're going to get into a image of that as well here in a minute. And then as we move up the barrel, yeah, you can see how dirty that is. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of show you how traveling up the barrel these lands look. And you have to realize that it's twisting the whole way up there, right? So that's what you're seeing there. Well, let's look at the numbers here. So after 1,000 rounds, I have a CBTO of 2.1860 inches to the lands. That's right on the lands, or just off probably 1/1000th of an inch. When the barrel was new, I had 2.1550 inches. So after 1,000 rounds, it has eroded 0.0310 inches, which means I'm eroding about 0.03 of an inch per 100 rounds. And that's well within the norm for 6.5 Creedmoor barrel. If you do your research, you'll see that 0.03 is about right. And I don't load hot, right? I'm running a 2760 feet per second round. And that's based on the ELDM bullet, the 140 grain, which really likes that velocity. And the other thing I wanted to see was, this is my new preferred barrel blanks barrel, and I wanted to make sure that it was eroding in that range, right? I was hoping not to see something like 4 or 5 thousandths or 6 thousandths erosion, which would have really given me some issues, I think. So this barrel has been great. I can't say enough good things about it. Good groups, everything is stable, and as you can see, it's eroding just fine. So with that said, let's move on to the next topic of will I chase those lands or not, and some final thoughts. Well, let's recap and talk about chasing those lands. So, we started off with looking at what the lands are, what they do, what it is to be on the lands, off the lands, jammed into the lands, and then we just looked at the fact that I'm eroding this barrel about 3/1000ths of an inch every 100 rounds, which is normal, which is good. Now let's talk about, am I going to chase those lands? The answer is yes, but in a certain way, right? I like the way Eric Cortina put this in one of his videos. Look, some guys want to chase the lands by increasing or decreasing the seeding depth every 100 rounds according to the erosion. So, for example, I've got this barrel set at 60, or the cartridge is set at 65/1000ths of an inch off the lands for my bullet that I use, the ELDM 140 grain. And that really works good, right? Just shot that last weekend, chronoed it. I was at 2760 feet per second, SD of 3, ES of 7, and a group of 3/8 of an inch at 100 yards. I am very happy with that. I'm not changing anything. Some guys, though, would come back to the shop after 100 rounds of practice or in a match, and they would increase the next 100 rounds. They would decrease the seeding depth, is what I want to say, by 3/1000ths of an inch. So they would always be at that 65/1000ths, and that's called chasing the lands, right? I'm not going to do it that way. What I want to do is keep using the seeding depth I have, and let's see when things start kind of getting out of whack. Every 300 or 400 rounds, I'll do I'll chronograph things. I'll do a grouping. I'll make sure the SDs and the ESs are still staying good. And if they're not, or my groups are getting out of whack, because really that's the big thing, right? It's the group. If that SD went from 3 to, oh my gosh, 9, guys, that's still a great SD. There's nothing wrong with that. And if that group stays the same, all good. So I'm only going to make adjustments as adjustments are necessary. I do have to say, in that old Bartline barrel of mine, do you know I never adjusted the seeding depth one time? And after that thing had 3,000 rounds through it, I was still punching half-inch groups. And my SDs and ESs, the SDs were sub double digits, and the ESs were under 15. So, there's just a way to look at this, and some guys want to chase these, knock yourself out. Doesn't matter to me. I'm just doing it the way that I feel comfortable with it. Well, another video, and I really appreciate your time. I hope you learned a little bit, because I've been learning a lot about all of this in the past year, especially since I've been in PRS, well, a year and a half. And I appreciate all your comments, the likes, the follows, and subscriptions. So with that said, I've got some other stuff coming up, so stay tuned for that. And until next time, shoot straight.